Studios, a Boston-based but virtual game company, game studio. And we produce our own games, we produce games and software for other people who want it to be made, as many people in the area do. And recently we've been really into virtual reality, and that's an exciting new technology that lets us feel like we are inside of a new virtual digital space that we've created. So we're building games right now for VR, and we're really into it. Danger, why are you into VR?
I really love VR because when you're in VR, you can get an old game and it, the art assets, they're like, whatever, they're really old, low res, but a ladder that was, you would ignore it. You'd see it because you have to look at it to get from point A to point B, is now a wonderful thing that is actually in front of the wall that it's being supported by. It passes by you. It has a presence in the worlds that you're now inhabiting, and it's a lot more immersive than any screen can ever get you to.
Yeah, you really see depth like you do with your actual vision in real life. You see, I can see how far away the next wall or the next building is, and people underestimate how much you don't see that on a screen when you're looking at a movie or whatever on a flat screen. But when you're in VR and virtual reality, each eye gets its own view of the world, like how each eye actually gets its own view of the world in real life, and that's what lets you, like Danger says, you see this ladder actually out here and the wall is out here, and you really don't get that impression in a normal 2D medium, in a medium that takes place on a screen. And on top of that, there's the head tracking. You can look around, I can see what's behind me, I can see what's happening over there. So it's not just like I'm watching this thing happen, it's like I'm really in the space where it's happening, and I can,
It's a very intense experience to be in VR. It drowns out the world. The closest thing we've had, if you know, is Track IR, which changes the...
What is IR?
It's an infrared tracking system. It pretty much tells you where your head's pointing. We're going to change the view of the screen. But the fact that you look left and the screen's still in front of you means that you're now using like the side of your vision to try and see forward, but have your head turned. And this is not a natural thing for us. We should always have the world in front of us. So this is the natural culmination of the technology.
So how do you guys see yourself in the future? Do you think you guys are die-hard virtual reality dudes, or where do you see yourselves going?
Well, I think that and the main project we've been working on is not exclusively for VR, but we also have a VR mode, and we've really been pushing that a lot. And kind of for now, that's the line we've been treading of like, we really are enthusiastic about this technology, and we want to, help push it along into the mainstream. But most people aren't yet ready for the full leap, and I think in the future, at least the two of us are very excited about really committing to this being the next big medium. So yeah, I think we're gonna keep doing this stuff.
But that's just the headpiece, though. What components, when you put them together, can give you a virtual reality experience? Is it just the headpiece?
Interesting. Wow.
Yeah, so there are a couple things. There's a wired solution called the Razer Hydra. It has wires, and it's like a 360 controller broken in half. So you have each part separately, and it'll track where your hand is and how it's rotated. It has joysticks on it and things, so you can actually interact with the world. And that's okay.
Point at stuff and see where your hand is.
Right, and you can pick things up and throw them. But the wires are pretty horrible. So a company called 6 Sense right now is working on wireless ones, which are going to be the standard for a little while. There's also haptic controls coming out, which have different weights around a handhold, and they shift themselves to make it feel like you're swinging something that has like a sword from just a handle. And it's amazing. Yeah, I don't quite know how to explain it, but if you see this technology, you're like, oh, I can understand that. That's very simple, it makes sense, and I guess people have been saying it really works well for swinging maces and baseball bats. So we're not that far off. I guess haptic gloves in the future, which are gloves that'll make you feel like you're touching virtual objects. It'll stop your fingers from going through things that aren't should be there because you see them.
And then I'd say the highest grade thing that I'm aware of right now for consumers would be a omnidirectional treadmill, where you strap into this thing that's, so a treadmill you can walk forward, the omnidirectional treadmill you can walk in any direction, but it's still a stationary device. So it's this platform you can stand in that lets you just move in any direction and actually walk, feel like you're walking through a virtual space even though you're stationary. And then Valve, who's showing off the headsets today, have a demo at their office that is an entire room that you can walk around in, a physical room that is mapped virtually that you can walk around in. And their current solution takes a lot of setup. That you have to put these images on the wall that the headset tracks. And they've mentioned that they have a better solution and haven't elaborated what that is yet. But a lot of people are looking for, how can I have a holodeck in my house? A holodeck being a Star Trek anything room. And I think there's going to be a huge range here, where on one hand we have the devices we've been talking about, where you have the omnidirectional treadmills and the haptic gloves and the pointing sensors and whatever, all these things. But I think on the very low end, we're also going to have, I would expect that the headset itself will be able to see your hands pretty soon. So, just with a headset and nothing else, I would think if you bring your hand up, you're going to be able to see that virtually inside of it. And maybe some amount of awareness of, like, I look at a wall and it tells me there's actually physically a wall there, so I don't crash into it. So I think even on the very low end, even if you just buy a headset, you'll still have some level of pretty natural feedback and interactivity with it. And then there's everything else we've been talking about that's the higher grade, if you really want to invest and have the most incredible home VR experience possible, then you can do that too.
All right, final question for you guys. You guys have a demonstration here tonight. Give us a little bit of a background about what it is and kind of, walk us through it before we actually see the demo.
One of the games that we're showing here today is CosmoKnots that we're working on for a while, where the main crux of the game is you're flying around leaving this tail behind you that you're creating. And the mechanic of it right now is that you're flying through space, trying to go through these hoops, collecting goodies in the hoops, and you're going faster and faster the whole time. It's kind of like a fully 3D Snake, like classic game of Snake, if it was all around you and you're just creating this tail forever. So it's basically a space flyer that makes a tail.
All right.
It also has an interesting progression system, so to get from one level to another, it's very similar to Star Fox, if you played that, where if you do the hard challenge in the level, you go to the next hardest level. If you do the minimum requirements, like getting half the barrels in the level, you'll go to the easy one. So there's a little bit for everybody, whether your skill level's novice or advanced.
Right, exactly. We wanted to make it accessible and interesting for people who are kind of casual game players, as well as people who are super hardcore and want something super hard but don't want to make everybody do the super hard thing if they're not into it. So that's where that came from.
So you guys stoked for this demo?
Yeah.
All right, let's do it.
seeing CosmoKnot here, which is a game we've been working on for a little while. This is specifically the VR virtual reality mode. This is a game that is kind of like a 3D snake in space that you'll see right about now. So if Danger looks behind him, he sees that he's making this tail in space. You can also see it in our rear view mirror there. So the idea of the game is you are leaving this tail as you fly around. And right now he's activating a challenge path, which is how we do difficulty in the game, where you're flying through space, and if you choose to do these challenges, like this yellow one that he's activated, then you get easier or harder next levels, so people can progress at the difficulty that they prefer, or the difficulty that they're capable of. So he's going to be navigating this obstacle course through space, avoiding his tail whenever he sees that, and trying to get through all of these hoops. And hey, Danger, let's see the tail. And we'll also see as he flies around that he has left this whole tail this whole time that he wants to not crash into, and hopefully also make a interesting piece of taily art out of. So there you see he's flying by some of what he created earlier, this purple tentacle tail. So the main idea of this game, like I said, was just based on creating tail as you fly, and we've been doing various experiments with that. This is kind of the most successful experiment so far of flying through this obstacle course, trying to get through a series of levels like this. But also one of the original ideas that we started with on this game was to have other players racing on the tail as you drive. So that would be taking the experience you're seeing right now and then adding kind of on the back of this character's tail, adding racers who are trying to catch up to this player you're seeing. So that is sort of still the end goal here for the project as we keep working on it. And he has crashed. And totally crashed. There we go. So he crashed into the environment at last and now gets a broad view of the environment from afar, and he can see the tail that he has made during his run. Full run right there.
How's the gameplay?